Babysitters. What were the weirdest rules parents asked you to follow? Story 1. The 3-year-old daughter had to watch this VHS tape of a live Fleetwood Mac concert before bed. I was like, okay, cute. That's adorable. 3-year-olds love the weirdest things. She's so quirky, and this will be fun. But she didn't love it. She always wanted to watch Land Before Time instead, but it was always on the note left for me, like pager number, pediatrician, chicken soup for dinner is in the fridge, and watch Fleetwood Mac at 6:30 before bed. Obviously, the family eventually found out I wasn't making her watch it, as I had no fucking reason to believe it was a secret. They were clearly upset by this, and I was never called back to babysit, so that was weird. Story 2. Not a rule, but a single mom once told me to use the bat by the door in the event the kid's father comes by and tries to take them. That was pretty weird and uncomfortable. Story 3. I was 13 and was babysitting my neighbor's kids. It was my first time, so the parents walked me through all the rules about the bathroom and TV and food and bedtime, etc. Just as the parents were taking off for the night, the mom came back in and whispered to me, "Don't go in the basement." As a teenager in the 80s, my mind went to all the scariest movies that had basements. I avoided the door to the basement all night until I had to put the kids to bed. Then I walked slowly to the door and put my ear against it. I heard what sounded like whimpering, and then it sounded like a sad laugh. I ran to the couch and started watching TV to get my mind off of it. But then I heard something fall in the basement, and I knew someone was down there. I really don't know how I got the courage or stupidity to do it, but I went over and opened the door. The whining instantly got louder. I went down just 3 or 4 stairs so I could peek down, and I saw a goat. Not a ghost, a goat. As soon as the goat saw me, he started bleating loudly. It scared the crap out of me. I went upstairs and the goat was still bleating loudly, so much that it woke up the kids. The oldest girl came out and said, "Did you open the door to the basement?" I said, "Yeah, why?" She asked, "When you do that, Carlos thinks you're going to feed him and he starts yelling." Thank God I knew it was a goat first, because if she had said that before I went down, I would have thought Carlos was some kidnapped person in the basement who would yell for food. It became very funny to me. The mom came home and I told her what happened, and she almost died laughing. They were repairing the goat pen and had to keep him in the basement for a few days. I still remember every moment of that night vividly. I think she told me not to go into the basement that way either to mess with me, or she was so used to telling her daughters not to go down there that she didn't even think of how creepy it would sound to someone else. I bet that goat was probably driving her crazy over the last week. Story 4. On the opposite side of the spectrum, the family gave me instructions to let their kids drink chocolate milk, which they were otherwise not allowed to have. I think they wanted their kids to associate babysitter time with fun time, so the parents could go out more often. Seeming to work out well for them, the kids both grew up to be successful people. Story 5. The mom had me put her kids in the car seats and sit in the driveway with all the car doors open while she just hung out inside the house. 5 hours of me standing in the driveway, watching them sit inside their car. Never returned. As for people asking why I didn't take them somewhere, she specifically asked me to just sit in the driveway with them. I also didn't have my driver's license yet, so I couldn't have taken them anywhere even if I wanted to. The kids were twins who were 4 years old, I think. They were weirdly well behaved and didn't complain about what we were doing. To this day, I have no idea what she was doing inside or why she didn't just let them play in the yard. I am just as confused as you. Story 6. I used to babysit for this family when I was in high school, in the 80s, and they had no books or reading material of any kind, except that there would usually be like 2 sections of the Wall Street Journal and a running magazine lying around. No books. Anyway, once I went over there, and the mom told me like 9 times, begged me, not to eat the box of Nilla wafers that was in the cupboard because she needed them for a recipe the next day. Begged. I was like, okay, got it. They're totally safe because I don't even like vanilla wafers. She kept mentioning it, and it was the first thing she asked me about when they got home. Story 7. I had to put the kids to sleep with the CD player going. That wasn't the weird part. It was a recording of their parents basically going, "Molly, you are wonderful. You are a star. You are going to shine bright." That isn't super weird, but it was like several hours long, and apparently they listened to it every night. Story 8. asked me to drive their 3-year-old twins around in my personal vehicle for 2.5 hours because that's the only way they can nap. No, I simply put the kids in their beds, closed the door, and they were asleep in 15 minutes. Story 9. I used to regularly babysit one of my younger cousins. At nap time, I had to put her in a zip-up pajama with feet. I then had to duct tape the zipper down and duct tape the wrists in a way that wasn't restricting, but she couldn't pull her hands into her onesie. If I didn't do this, she would pull her hands in and dig in her diaper. Always. My aunt got tired of cleaning poop-covered walls regularly. Story 10. Hippie family. The 2-year-old had no bedtime and no rules. She can eat what she wants, no bedtime, and if she falls asleep, leave her wherever she crashed. The parents came home at 2:30 to a toddler eating chocolate cake on the couch, with her preferred American Pickers on TV. That's fine, apparently. 6 months later, the mom is very pregnant and asked that when the baby is born, if I could wrangle the toddler while the mom gives birth in a bathtub at home. The 2-year-old was in the room, watching, while I explained what's happening. I left that evening when the parents came home, fried chicken in the toddler's hand, keeping up with the Kardashians on TV, and denied their next request to come sit. As a 20-year-old, I wasn't prepared to see the mess of someone else's home birth. Story 11. I babysat my 4 cousins once, aged maybe 8 to 12. One night, they all asked for me to read a story, so I happily obliged. When I told my aunt, she replied, "They're much too old for that. Why did you do it?" Well, if the kids want a story, I'll read them a story. Why the hell not? I've read stories to my 35-plus husband before. In the car, though, not before bedtime. My aunt isn't evil and isn't someone who would put her kids in front of some trashy reality show. They're an upper-middle-class, well-educated family. In fact, my uncle collects amazing, mostly European, graphic novels, and the kids have always had access to culture. Books, museums, concerts. I think my aunt just meant something like, "You didn't have to do that," and how odd of them. She doesn't have any filter and is usually quite blunt. Maybe the kids never asked her to read them? Then again, yeah, in the end, it just sounded wrong, but chill. Story 12. Once had me feed her 1-year-old only from a freshly opened baby food container. If she only ate 2 or 3 spoonfuls, I was to throw it away, and when she wanted more in 15 minutes, I was to open a new one. I thought it was so she would finish her meal and be full for a while, but she said it was okay to feed her whenever she wanted. I would probably throw away 5 or 6 jars in a 2-hour sitting. They cost more than I usually made for sitting. Story 13. Not a rule, as I only went there once, but a very odd request. I used to work housekeeping at a hospital. A doctor that was frequently on the floor that I worked on asked me if I could watch his kids on Saturdays. He had 3 toddlers, ages 2, 3, and 4. His wife didn't work, but wanted time to go shopping and get her hair and nails done. I totally understand, as my son was 4. I was also allowed to bring him. I get there early as the doctor is getting ready to leave. He says he's cooking breakfast, and while he gets the kids fed and dresses, could I help change his wife's tampon? She'd drunk a lot the night before and was completely passed out and was leaking and messing up their sheets. He's a doctor. I told him I should work for someone more than a few minutes before I go rummaging in their private parts, and that I'd tend to the kids if he tended to his wife. What I really wanted to do was leave, but the kids would be home alone with their hungover mother, so I chose to finish cooking and stay. He went upstairs and sent the kids to the kitchen where I was putting food on plates. After a little while, he popped his head in and said it was a short day. He was done upstairs and he was leaving. I never met the wife. He came home at noon, gave me $100, and I never spoke to him again. Story 14. Only 2 hours of reading time. To be fair, the mom was a librarian and her 2 kids were adorably nerdy. They had an entire room filled with books, and even then we'd make trips to the library from time to time. The rest of the time was supposed to be outside or doing some activity. It was a super sweet deal too, because she paid for not only her kids to have a pool pass, but me as well. So we basically went every day all summer, and we would play in the pool. Story 15. When I was about 14, some friends of my parents asked me to babysit their 9 or 10 sons who wanted a boy babysitter. When I got to their house, the mom told me that her son loved poached eggs and asked me to make him a poached egg on toast for dinner. She quickly explained to me how to make it as if it were something really simple and easy. Later that night, after wasting half their eggs in a hopeless effort to make a poached egg, I asked the kid if he liked scrambled eggs. He said he loved scrambled eggs and ate them without complaint. When the parents came home, I apologized for using up their eggs. They laughed and seemed to appreciate the effort, although the mom explained it again and insisted that it was really simple. I'm almost 40 now, and I still suck at making poached eggs, and it cracks me up that the mom thought a 14-year-old should be able to whip one up based on a few instructions. On the other hand, as a parent, I appreciate the hell out of that kid. Story 16. I was babysitting a 3 or 4-ish-year-old girl and an 18-month-old boy. The boy had to be carried in a buggy, which is all very well, but I was supposed to add some kind of mini stairs, 2 steps, on the back of it so the girl could stand on it, because her legs get tired, said parents while making quotation marks with their fingers. The damn thing hit my legs every time I took a step. That kid was also taught to not wait and look for restrooms when she needed to go, and proceeded one time to take a shit in a public garden and wipe herself with a leaf with an ease that certified me that wasn't her first time. Story 17. The mother asked me to stop by the house to meet her 2-year-old son a week before I was supposed to babysit him for the first time. I pulled up to the house and saw that the young boy was standing at the glass front door with a t-shirt on and nothing else. I went in, and I must have given the child a strange look, because the mom started to explain that her son doesn't like to wear pants, so they let him run around pantsless with no diaper on, though he isn't potty trained. I told her that this made me uncomfortable, and asked if I could put pants on him when I was watching him, and she got upset with me, and said they don't like to make their 2-year-old son do anything he doesn't like to do. So they let him run around without pants on, which unfortunately means he goes to the bathroom on the floor since he won't wear a diaper and he isn't potty trained. Story 18. Don't let the kids have the brownies on top of the cabinet. They were special brownies. I was more than welcome to take some home with me though. Not a weird rule necessarily, actually a pretty solid and generous rule. It just cracked me up when they told me that. Was not in a state where marijuana is legal in any way. Story 19. Refused to let their kids eat raw veggies for absolutely no reason. They never told me this, so I gave the kids ages 5 to 7 raw, washed, and cut broccoli with some ranch for a snack. They were happily eating as the mom was getting ready for a party. She walked by, saw the kids eating the broccoli, took it from them, microwaved it, and said they like it much better this way. The kids did not like it better, and even though it was weird, I was then instructed to never give them raw veggies. I could understand if they were toddlers still learning to chew, but these kids were plenty old enough to chew broccoli florets without choking. Story 20. When I was a kid, I got paid $75 a week to watch 2 boys over a summer. It was amazing money, but the dad was a big bow hunter, and he made loads of deer chili, and he insisted that his 10-year-old and 2-year-old eat tons of it. They loved it, but the 2-year-old would take these massive, awful, horrible, nasty chili shits constantly. The dad explained all this to me, and my instructions were to just put him in the shower and hose him down. I was offered plenty of chili, but never ate any. Story 21. One parent said I had to read a Bible passage during dinner and for a bedtime story. I also had to use christening discipline methods. To this day, I have no idea what she meant, but if the kids acted out, I would just say, "Would the Lord like you doing that?" Had to make the kids pray every 15 minutes. I thought it was a bit much, but gotta respect it. Another one said I had to do this really complicated skincare routine. Maybe the kid's skin is sensitive. No, the kid was fine. The mother was just obsessed with that whole glass skin fad. Story 22. I never really had any rules to follow, but I did have one terrible mother. The mom asked me to babysit her 3 kids overnight. As I was in high school, I couldn't do it, so she said she could be back by 9 p.m. I figured it was fine and let my mom know, even though they only lived a few houses away. The kids were great. We played around, watched a movie, I fed them and put them to bed. 9 p.m. rolled around and the mom was nowhere to be found. She hadn't left a number to reach her, and I figure she was just running behind. I cleaned up and watched some TV while waiting for her. 10 p.m. hits, not home. 11 p.m., nope. Finally, at around 12 p.m., I called my mom. I explained what's up, that I'm tired and have school in the morning, etc. She agrees to come and stay away from the house with the kids till their mom shows up. Turns out she didn't come home until around 10 a.m. the next morning, long after my mom had called CPS. She gave my mom $20 for 16 hours of babysitting. None of the neighborhood kids were allowed to babysit for her after that. Story 23. This was way back in the mid-90s. Remember before we had DVR and all that jazz, and the only way to see what was currently on each channel was to whip out your TV guide or bring up the TV guide channel on your TV and watch the scrolling bars until you found something decent? In the early and mid-90s, advertisers figured out that the TV guide channel was a great advertising medium and would show ads on the top right of the screen and compress the scrolling shows playing now. The parents wouldn't allow me to turn on that channel because of the questionable content of the ads for things like laundry detergent or PG movie previews. The kids were 8 and 11 and were allowed to watch only a very select subset of shows that were usually geared towards kids 5 years younger than them. Nickelodeon was banned in that house, as were the words shucks, hate, and darn. Story 24. Not necessarily a rule, but the first time I went to their house, they told me about their daughter's very serious peanut allergy and walked me through the EpiPen, prevention, phone numbers of their neighbors who were doctors. All fine so far. I took this very seriously. But then the mother puts her hands on my shoulders and said, "If she dies, we won't blame you. It won't be your fault." While I appreciate the thought, this freaked me the hell out, and I was 100 times less comfortable. Story 25. I'm a professional nanny, and one of the families I worked for had a strict no games rule. Not as in video games, but as in any game that could have a winner and a loser. No board games, no tag, nothing. Winning and losing leads to hurt feelings, was their explanation. I'd have to stop the girls anytime they said something like, "I bet I can get to the end of the driveway faster," and remind them, Mom and Dad say no competition, remember? Everything had to be perfectly equal or the parents would lose it completely. I fired them as clients shortly after. Story 26. No calling the radio station. This was after I'd let their 10-year-old daughter call a local radio station to ask the DJ who we thought was hotter, Garth Brooks or Alan Jackson. The DJ, as I recall, told the kid to fuck off and hung up. This was also during the early 90s, when Garth Brooks was kinda cute and looked less like a potato in a cowboy hat, and Alan Jackson was panty-dropping smoking hot.